think I thought you would have been proud of me last night because I went to the poker for
Oh
pony.
shit. Okay.
Have you been? I can't remember. Have you been to the Derby?
Once for a Union Rags year. I think that was like 10 years ago, something like that. So
Union Rags. I forgot that you're a Union Rags guy, dude. I forgot about that.
that's the horse that made me fall in love with the sport. I kept on losing money on him. Finally, made it back on the Belmont. But that those are days when I didn't know what I was doing. So yeah.
Do you know that me and a lot of people we absolutely hated that horse?
Really, beautiful
Like,
horse. I always try to visit him at the farms and everything.
I mean, everyone has that horse, right? Like we all have a horse. Like for me, it was Silver Charm growing up. I mean, there's like a few others, but some claimers. But I wanted to just before we dip into everything because you're just such a. I have a lot of respect for you, man. Like I know you came into this game like 10 years ago or maybe a little longer, and you just like came from the hedge fund world and crushed it, and then just like spent God knows how much money building like these amazing computers and models to try to beat the horses. And we were talking about how you evolve every year. But before we talk about the horses, just real quick, because I know you're a hell of a card player. Like, do you play poker like for real too?
I mean, when I chose to go to school in New York City because they had the best underground card clubs there. So I wouldn't say I really focus on my education much. It's more, I got my education at the card rooms there. So, I played cash games with some of the people that you see today, like Nick Schulman and Tony FSNDR. They were playing cash games. So I learned a lot. But at that time, I played a poker game with a hedge fund manager there who became a mentor. And he says, you're wasting time in the poker world. Why try finance? Because poker, you have to sit there. Finance, once you have things built, you can let it run automated and make money that way. I don't like to work hard. I like to work efficiently. So I decided not to do a full-time poker career. I was going that direction after college and instead use the expensive degree I got to go in the world of finance. And I learned a lot from there that it's applicable to racing. So, but it was a transition. I realized a transition because my ultimate, like what I'm doing now is the horses. And I find that to be a better game. I'll go, I just think it's more meritocratic, right? One person can manage your destiny. You don't have to rely on other people to help you. It's just you. And there's no resume. It doesn't care who you are, what degrees you have, what race you are. The racing markets are beautiful in that way, So I think it was a good transition, but it was a tough one. It was one where you had to leave behind the safe world of hedge funds and go into kind of the more murky world as a professional gambler, which is not an easy thing to do. There's probably less than 0.1% that do this for a living, right?
So in the poker games, was it kind of like rounders, like KGB style? Like, was there like, doors you had to go through, or these like really posh, like, super nice, like Manhattan apartments and stuff?
There were several card rooms. The one I went to was right across from my apartment. And that's why I chose my apartment. And that was next to LA Sports Club. So that was a nice building. But there's some places that look sketchy. Like you walk out, you get shot. So I'm in back in the Lower East Side 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when it was not a safe area. In New York City, I'm talking about New York City, Lower East Side. Right now it's posh, right? So, but with gambling, you have to dig in some murky water. Sometimes the best games are in the sketchiest areas, right? So you need a bit of EQ instead of the IQ in the circumstances. So that comes in handy. You know what I'm saying, Christian?
Some of the best scores are in the claiming 10,000 and 12,000 races, dude. It's not, there's a parallel. Gibson, a guy I had on the show the other week, who is a mentor. He brought up a horse named Dancing Gandy who won at like 50 or 60 to 1, and it was just dropping and was overmatched. And I mean, he was like that kind of intuitive, kind of like right brain guy that was able to see things that most people can't see. But yeah, no, they're all related, dude. And then you got like last night where you got the woman at the table. Granted, it's for charity, but I mean, she ends up we all start with $10,000 in chips, and she's like, "Oh, I'll play, sure, for fun." And obviously, she's got no pressure because she doesn't even know how to really play poker. Next thing you know, she's got like 150,000 in chips, and she's like, "Oh, is Ace King like good?" And you're just like, what are we doing? But she was really fun and sweet, so it was actually like it was kind of entertaining. But yeah, that's gambling means something different to each person because, what are we doing, right? We're trying to find something that somebody else doesn't know. You know what I mean? We're trying to find an edge, and we're trying to monetize on something that's very hidden, and it takes a lot of patience, and it takes a hell of a lot of pain, bro, to like work it out. And I know like the models that you build, you probably, I mean, do you have, before we go into like some of your personal life and stuff, do you see your models? Are there times when you're like, you're getting beat and you have to like completely like redo it?
Yeah, I think we have to separate process and outcome, right? If the loss is because my process is bad, like, either my handicapping is bad, my sizing is bad, my pool selection is bad, whatever it is, then that's a problem. But my process, I think, is good and the result is bad, then that's not a big deal, right? Like if you did a lot of research and you bet this horse at 10-1 that you think should be 5-1 and it loses, then that's not a bad bet. You just lost. You do that 20 times, you're going to make a lot of money, right? So I think you got to separate that process and outcome, and I've become better at that. So before, when I was a newbie, I always want to be right. Now it's not about being right; it's about making money. So I think much longer term, not like, I hit this horse, I was right. No, that's mindset. It's a business now. It's not entertainment. So when you're playing for entertainment, it's different. You can just relax. But when you're playing as a business and for profit and as your a source of income, you need to approach it differently. And that's something that you look through time doing this.
How do you handle the swings? Like, do you have moments where like months where you lose tons, or I mean, obviously we know probability is a long-term game, but like, do you ever doubt yourself?
I mean, I don't doubt myself because I feel like high agency, and I'll figure a way to solve it. It's not like, here's a problem, what was me? It's like, here's a problem, how to find a solution around it. So on the swings, like the swings are like the kind of like the tax you play to play a positive ED game. If you can't emotionally survive variance, your edge is theoretical, right? So that's the IQ and EQ, right? So like I said, I try to separate the quality of the decision from the quality outcome. A bad beat does not automatically mean it's a bad bet, and a win does not automatically mean it's a good bet. That seems obvious, but emotionally is very hard. The job is like, keep grading your process honestly, right? The scoreboard lies in the short run and the truth is told in the long run, right? That's what makes the game so mentally difficult. So it's kind of like variance and tuition. Don't go on tilt, because tilt is like the dropout form, right? Bad beats are easy to survive. Bad reaction, bad beats are what kill you. So I think that emotional stability is extremely important. That's what catch a lot of extremely smart people who can build these great models by surprise, because they build these models, but they can't execute them because they're not emotionally wired to handle the variance that is required to make money in this game. Like, you have to be willing to lose to win. I mean, that's a cliche, right?
Yeah, I know. It's in the beginning when you first started doing this, like what was that like when you were first starting to build things? Like maybe walk me through when you first, in your first couple of years, like how are you feeling, and versus now where you've tightened the screws?
I think initially it was a hobby. So I built a baseline model that was good enough, but now it's more like I'm trying to get incremental edges by finding stuff that other people don't. So what has changed? Just the level of sophistication, I guess. I don't know. I mean, the process is still the same. I still do good scientific research, properly test. But I think now is I'm getting to the weeds of things that most people don't look at, or most people don't process in the correct way. So the process hasn't changed. I think it's just the scale has changed, meaning now it's not a game of beating the game. Beating the game is easy on small handle. Like if you're patient and don't need to make a lot of money, you can bet 50 grand a year and beat it. But to beat it betting millions is another proposition, because then you're saying a lot of people in the market are stupid, and that's not the case. The market's very sharp. So
Right.
I think the difference is I'm not trying to beat the game. I'm trying to beat the game at scale, and those are two very different problems. You want to be a local convenience store, you want to be Walmart, right? Those are two very different type of business propositions.
Well, and then you've got like the CAWs who are like Amazon, right?
Correct. And then that's another thing you brought up. In the beginning, I was trying to mimic them, but I realized they're just the best at their game. They have the structural advantages, that they can blanket bets. So what can I do to make money? And my thing now is like, I'm mostly worried about where CRWs get it wrong. I mean, they leave trails because they bet last. The trail's right there. You know exactly where they're going. So I try to figure out what they do. I mean, maybe I don't think they're that genius. I just think they have structural advantages and they can bet last, but their handicap models, I think, are pretty weak. I see them consistently bet horses that they shouldn't, or they fade horses that, you know, it's, I might not be right, but based on my dad, I think they're doing a lot of structural things wrong. So that's where I take my advantage, which is not try to replicate their game, but try to steal a little bit where they're wrong, where they're off, or they're not, not seeing things correctly that I think I am. So
I think you're spot on. I think the people listening to this might have their head blown open a little bit when they hear that, the reveals, of these CAW players, when you do see a horse drop, it can be small, it can be, depending on what you consider small or big, on 10 to 1 to 8 to 1, 4 to 1 to 3 to 1, or 5 to 2. To be able to think about the game like that, though, and to try to reverse engineer, okay, well, why did the CAWs like this horse? That's actually really, really shrewd, man. I think a lot of people listening that want to get better, if they did see that, and they saw the horse win, of course, but they'd have to track the losses too. And like you said, I do see like certain horses that that get bet way, they get over bet. And I'm trying to figure out, is that CAW money, or is that, just like owner money? How do you distinguish between like an owner that just gets, drunk at the track and throws money around versus CAW? You just basically wait to the last, 10 seconds. Are you able to kind of really tell when the money's coming in, like that last minute?
Yeah, I keep snapshots of everything. I have a database of tick by tick money going to the pools, right? So, and the last flash is where most of these CRWs act. You can just find out what horses take money, and then correlate it with what factors there are in horse racing, and figure out what they're betting or what data sets they're using. That's their weakness, which is because they bet last. You know what they're doing.
It's kind of
you can back it out statistically, right?
Yeah,
so.
Yeah.
Look, CRWs are a reality of the modern game, right? The track seekers need them, right? And they're not going anywhere. So I think complaining about shot money is not a business plan, right? I'm a professional gambler. I don't do this for entertainment. I'm probably complain, but when you're a business pro, you got to take what the market gives you. And the market's giving you a market filled with CAWs, right? So if you find horses that you bet consistently get, slammed late below your fair odds or whatever, that sucks, but that's also feedback from market that's telling you that your edge is no longer hidden. It's obvious. It's been commoditized. So you got to find something else. That does not mean the game is impossible. It means that you have to adapt, right? So my sole job as a gambler is to adapt to the markets, to get what the market gives me, not to complain and try to turn the markets to what suits me, right? So the adaptability part is where I think most people miss, which is like, to make money, people are going to get better. So you have to get better, or you have to take advantage of what they're doing wrong, right? It's a constantly evolving game. The thing does not stay static. I think people need to realize that. So if your horse get bet down too much, your factors are way too obvious. What was edge before is no longer edge. Like in finance, they say what used to be an alpha is now beta. What used to be a money-making proposition, everybody's found. Like if you're still betting horse on pace, you're a losing gambler. Everyone knows that, right? So it's just harsh realities gambling. That if your horse will get down, your edges are not hidden. It's obvious.
Yeah, and I think everyone's got different goals, right? So we're talking more about the pro side of this. So obviously somebody could, like you said before, they might want to be a convenience store, mom and pop liquor store, making a little here and there. And, there's just some obvious truths nowadays that, it's like the old adage, like loan speed. Like you want to talk about one of the most obvious plays, of all time. And if you're like thinking you're the guy that's looking at a race that's, oh my God, this is a lone speed horse. And let's say the horse is, first of all, if he was likely to win, he'd probably be smashed, well below his actual probability. And then let's assume he's not smashed and it's a lone speed horse. Yes. And he's going off at like 5 or 6 or 7 to 1 in a let's say a decently competitive race where most people should see that. That's a problem if this horse is not getting touched too, because that edge should be bet down. So there's so many I don't know, whiners, people that get mad at, oh, the price is too low. This used to be my horse. I'm not getting 4 to 1 anymore. It's like, again, survive or die. And I think you've actually, I mean, I've seen this in, hanging with you a few times at like, NHC or tournaments. And I've seen some of the horses that you might say, hey, I'm alive here to this long shot, or, I remember in the BCBC, and that's like, I do want to talk about some of your tournament stuff too. Like, I remember in the BCBC, we talked after it, and you had what was it? It was like a couple years ago at Del Mar, and you were in position with like 15 or something K, and you were debating to go all in on a win bet between two horses. Walk me through what happened there again.
Yeah. So that one hurt because it involves a decision point, right? Which is my whole goal in that tournament was to get to full Serrano with about 15 to 20 grand and shove it all in, right? That is why I never made a play early on. I just sat on the money to the end. But unfortunately, my model decided Skippy was a better bet than full Serrano at the last second. And in the past, switching has helped me. I'm more right than wrong. I mean, sometimes I switch and it's wrong, but I have to trust my gut, and it's worked for me past. It didn't this time, right? So it just happened to not work on the biggest tournament ever. And it hurt because my whole plan was to sit there and wait for that horse. I guess my plan, I did a post-mortem. I don't think it was a bad bet. I think I should have made the switch, right? But I think the problem with me is maybe I should have kept another bullet, a little bit more money going that race so I can back two. I don't know. But it hurt in the sense my whole plan was to back full Serrano. But another horse showed up to be a better spot in that tournament for me. I switched, and after a race, I was like, that letdown, but it's okay. It's okay. Things like that happen, right? You move on. Next year, it's going to be BC between two horses, and I switch and I win. Who knows? So I think I'd put in perspective, keep don't let the tilt destroy you, right? That can destroy some people.
Yeah, the tilt is interesting because I feel like it's a muscle. You have to understand like what failure is, like what is it, like what is pain in gambling? Is it okay? Mm-hmm. Is it having the horses and being incorrect between you're choosing between two decisions that are close and it's a coin flip? Is it you didn't get your bet in on time? Is it that somebody else beat you and you're getting emotional about that? It's like but I think you and I share the same sentiment that if I lose a race on whether it's a lot of money or a little bit of money by a nose,
yeah,
we were talking about this before. It's like I'm wrong, and it's like the finality of horse racing is so beautiful, and I think oftentimes people look at the wire or they look at the finish of a race and they're like, oh, like I was so close. If you're a neck off, like that's bad, like really bad.
I get your point. I think you take it to a stronger degree, and I do. About a neck means I was wrong. But for me, it's like, when I hear things like I missed pick six by one leg, you're way off. That one leg's important, right? Yeah. It doesn't mean anything. Like 5 out of 6 is much, much, much easier than 6 out of 6, and the payouts reflect that. So I think there's certain thing about, is it really close or is it not? A head thing, I don't know. If you have a 20-1 shot loses by a head,
that feels a little better.
Yeah, or if a 20-1 shot loses by a head to a favorite, that's not so bad. If a 21 shot loses by head to 21, your handicap is even better, right? So I'm not sure. The losing my head thing, I think you're a little harder on yourself than I am.
I mean, I guess it depends on the race too.
Yeah.
I guess it's just I've looked at tens of thousands of races, maybe 50,000 races every weekend of my life on this, right? Pretty much. And I just think it's just kind of like, when you evaluate personal parts of your life, where am I showing up fully? When am I not actually in integrity with myself? If I say I'm going to work out, like how much am I going to work out? What is discipline? Like the future version of yourself? Like how do I score myself on everything? And I think, yeah, I'm going to be a little harder on myself about some stuff, like that's okay because I was raised that way, but also it's sometimes unnecessary. I'll take on more pain than I need to. But I mean, I know when I'm right and I know when I'm wrong and I know when I'm not sure and it's kind of in the middle, but I'm always looking, like you just said, when you look at your models, I'm always trying to find an edge. I'm always trying to like reevaluate. I'm always trying to see, okay, when I look at a race, like, we'll get into the Derby later, but But I just think it's always important to be true to yourself on one end, but hold yourself accountable for what you're doing and what you're thinking and what you're saying. And like I'm always trying to track myself in different ways. And I'm obviously with your sophisticated models and machine stuff, and like I don't know if you're doing neural networks and stuff, but like everything is just it's I'm always open to like going back to the fundamentals and reevaluating everything. It's like I'm not here to just eke out like this little edge. Like you said, every time people get smarter, there could be other opportunities in the market that arise because of all the adjustments to that.
There will always be opportunities in the market. You just got to find them, man. And it changes. It's cyclical. It changes. Right. So I think what you said about knowing when you're right and wrong is very important. If you don't know what you're right and wrong, how can you improve? A lot of people are dead wrong, but they think they're right and continue the way they do, So I think you are very self-aware, Christian. I think that's what you need to be a pro gambler, which is like, am I getting lucky or I just suck? And those are two very different things, right? And those two things almost look the same on the surface, especially in a short run, right? So you need a plan to do postmortems and analyze your results. Am I just bad or am I unlucky? And that's a question that most people don't ask themselves with the data that they have,
Well, it's also hard too to like track yourself and figure out like how am I getting better, and that's a tool that isn't really available to the public, but you can do that. You can go back through and look at all your 10 to ones, But what I was going to say is it's up to us to be our own doctors. Like I don't know if you're big into taking care of yourself and not necessarily like trusting, the system and doing your own research, talking to your own people, and same with betting. It's like everyone that's publicly usually discussing betting stuff isn't really telling you like what they're doing. It's very private, but anyway, I wanted to like this gentleman brought up, do you ever see racing moving to a poly market style? Are we riding parimutuel to the grave? I just thought that'd be interesting because you're a trader, and we'll go back to some other things I hadn't to discuss. But like, what do you think that horse racing right now should consider doing something with the Kalshi or poly markets, given just like on the win end? It'll never handle the exotics, of course, but what do you think about the possibility of that coming into the mix?
I mean, of course, more liquidity options is good for a gambler, but for them, I think they have a closed-minded outlook, which is like, we want to protect our dying parimutuel pools. Maybe their executives are graded on that, so they're trying to protect that by getting written access to exchange or fixed, right? It's it's good for the game, but we're going to have the same issues, right? Who's going to see those pools? Who's going to provide that liquidity? The retail trader's not going to sit on the bid and ask and wait for someone to take their bet. They're usually takers. They hit the bid or ask, right? So you need a sophisticated liquidity engine, and that's going to probably be CRWs too, right? So people think they're going to get a price and fix that they're not going to get in parimutuel, and they're going to be much more aligned, right? So if anything, it'll help with the transparency. It'll give the regular horse players better indication of price discovery of where the horse should be if there was exchange wagering. But given the politics involved, I don't think it's going to happen. And given horse racing does not run off of optimal solutions. It's run on decisions that follow some other matrix. So I don't know what they're going to do, but obviously it's good to have as many liquidity options as possible and let the market decide whether they bet parimutually or fixed or exchange, right? So, but look, my job is not to say where it should be. My job is to figure out what it is right now and try to find ways to beat it in the state it is right now.
But if you were an executive, because you are definitely like at that level, like you could think through the long-term, the benefits of racing opening up to potentially a new customer base. Do you see value in, and again, I'm not holding you to it, just thinking off the cuff, like, do you see value in reaching an audience that's like hardcore traders more, right? That may never, ever even be introduced to horse racing or think of it as gambling and never even entertain a bet. And now if there was a derby in the poly markets and they're like, oh, wait, what about the Derby? Even if their industry gets paid pennies, right? The average cost per customer in horse racing could range from $200 to $500. And so if you were to be able to reach 200,000, a million plus customers and throw a Derby opportunity in front of them, and even if it was maybe in a short-term mindset, maybe there was a way to do a deal with the industry there to have some kind of I don't know, a different type of revenue share. I don't even know how the structure would work, but how much money do you think horse racing would pay to get in front of a million customers on one of the biggest days of racing to just introduce their product and get people thinking, oh, I never thought about betting on a horse race, this is kind of cool. Like I look at it kind of like disruption is not your enemy. It's just it's like a person in the room, like that's somebody you don't understand, that doesn't communicate the same way, and you got to find a way to like work with them. But I don't know. I'm more open-minded on this thing, and I understand the economics are weird right now. But like, when I bring that into the mix, like, do you, as a trade guy, like, do you see like any like logic maybe in trying to do something there to try to reach a new audience given the state of the industry, or do you just think it's just not?
I mean, look, you can. I think the like you said, the poly market stuff. Maybe it's like a marquee race like Derby to get some of that cross pollination of gamblers from other markets, right? Because most gamblers these days are used to kind of fixed or exchange style, right? Not the parent mutual style, right? So I think you got a smart way like you're doing it is if they want to get more customers or gamblers, not just people drinking alcohol, but actually betting dollars, which you make money off of. I think they're attracted to fix and exchange, right? But to build something like that is not easy, right? So you can off-source it to Kalshi and Polymark or whatever, or they can build their own, which is, or they can license it to people. I know actively Churchill Downs, all these players are actively trying to cut signals to exchange wagering or fixed odds places. So what's good and what the politics want are not aligned. But then again, I don't know all the details. I don't know. I'm not the CFO and CEO. I don't know what they're doing. They're trying to maximize their value of their business, right? So what's my business to say where they should go, right? So, but yeah, look, you have great ideas, Christian, and you can make it happen. I'm probably the wrong person because I just simply don't have the time to worry about that kind of stuff right now, So,
I mean, I think we all as horse players have to start thinking about how to take care of this game, because it's just, it's at the eggshell of the eggshell. And I feel like I have to get involved. I think everyone needs to start thinking about how can we, address the fact that there's so many smart players, in this game that are making the odds change. People aren't evolving. People are mad at the drops. And what kind of incentives do we have to bring in new players? So I want to continue like to ask almost everybody I bring on the show just to be like, hey, what are some ideas? What are some things we can do? And, like I value your opinion. I think that there's a lot of different ways to tackle this. Go ahead.
I think promoting tournaments is a good one, right? It is it's so much easier to beat tournaments than it is to beat the pari-mutuel market straight up. So I think as a beginner, to limit your losses or even to make them gains early, tournaments are a great way to do it because you're not fighting the same. Your opponents are human. You're not CRWs, right? So it gives you a shot, lets you have fun. Risk management's there. A lot of new players go broke because of no risk management. Once your tournament is gone, you can't bet anymore, right? So it's a very kind of defined risk control way to learn things. So, I'm thinking of things we can tackle, like telling the tracks, oh, you got to build up this exchange platform and find the right liquidity providers, blah, blah, blah. It's a difficult task, but this tournament focus, which is nice. I see a lot of AW start focusing on that now. And you start gaining popularity, you start seeing more players play, right? So I got hooked because of tournaments. I got hooked because I saw you on Horseplayers, by the way. I think you know that, right? So, and if I didn't watch your Horseplayer show and I didn't play a tournament, I wouldn't be betting all this money into the pools, right? So,
so basically, what you're telling me is the show is probably going to cost me like hundreds of thousands of dollars because you're going to beat me in these tournaments.
I don't know. Sometimes I go for it and I fall put, so it's going to cost me 100 right sometimes to beat you. It goes both ways, Christian. You remember one, but you don't remember one.
You wouldn't be in the game if you didn't see the show, which is super funny. But that's not true. I'm sure you probably would have found your way around to it because that's what always happens. Like your destiny is your destiny. You don't choose it; it chooses you. and all of a sudden you're attracted to something. But I think it's cool. Let's talk a little bit about tournaments too, because everybody here that's probably listening, or not everybody, but a lot of these people, they love tournaments. Like tournaments, it changed my whole like view around racing, because it effectively is lowering the takeout in some ways, right? Because you're, we'll talk about the KDBC in a sec, but like when you're going to play the BCBC and you're going to pay $10,000 to enter, and you're going to put 2,500 into the pot, you're throwing away 25% of your money. So it's an interesting, like the way I'm kind of viewing it is, okay, if it's $2,500 that I'm throwing away to compete against you and all these other, top guys or women or whatever, if I'm trying to get to 10x, let's say 10x, which is not true for the BCBC, but 10x, that means I would take that 2,500 and multiply it by 10 to get to 25 grand. Like, so I'm giving up not 2,500, I'm giving up 25 grand. Right. So there's a lot of different ways I view tournaments, and I think about the math, about how, that's why you and I both, we see the value on the top, because, we have a track record that can get us there. A lot of people probably can't get to 10x or above, and they shouldn't, because if that's not your game and you don't do it well enough and you can't hit a tournament, 1 out of 10 times or 1 out of 20 times, if you can't hit 5%, you shouldn't be going for the jugular. But I wanted to get kind of your philosophy, like what goes through your mind when you, like, you don't have to, obviously we're competitors, but like when you think about it and you're going into a tournament, and we got one on Saturday, we're both being the KDBC, so we could just think about that one for a sec. But when you walk into the mind of yourself and you're like, all right, what am I doing here? Like, obviously you talked about what you did in the BCBC, sitting all the way to the end. I'm sure that was based on the horses that you liked at the end, but kind of walk through your mindset, and then like think about how we also could think of helping some tournament players avoid some basic mistakes.
Yeah, so I think tournaments are fascinating because they're not handicapping contests per se. They're kind of like decision contests, right? So the structure matters, right? So leadership, a leaderboard position matters, risk appetite matters. The same horse could be a good play or a bad play depending on the context, right? So cash play asks, is this profitable in the long run? That's when you make a bet. Tournament play asks, does this give me a path to win? Right? They're kind of different, right? So yeah, I still love competing because tournaments test a different part of you. They compress decision-making, emotion, ego, courage into a short window, right? The term is basically like poker with horses, a clock and a leaderboard, right? Kind of that thing. So I find it very fun, right? So kind of like the leaderboard changed the math of a tournament, but you still need some handicapping, right, to do well. But it's more friendly to players because you can actually beat the best in the world on any given tournament, right? So whereas if you're betting against CRWs, you're gonna go broke in the long run, right? So I hope that kind of answers the question, which is like they're different. I look at different things. I don't play cash in terms the same way. They share a very similar structure, like handicapping, but the actual implementation, execution are different depending on my venue. Is my venue pari-mutuel, exchange, fixed, a tournament? Because that it all depends. My choice of horses and the size I choose could be drastically different.
I mean, in some ways, it's true. It's also, I mean, it's value, right? So if you're finding value on a horse on the Derby day, you're going to probably bet that horse in the exchanges, in the win pools and cash, and in a tournament, right? Like aren't you just trying to optimize and find the highest value horse on the day, and whether it's a tournament or not?
Tournament to me is just another liquidity lever, right? In some places, you can only bet, a few grand on a horse and your odds drop, right? In tournament, I can bet the same few grand and get an implied liquidity from the prize pool. Yeah. So, for tournaments, I can use it because I want to win outright, or I can use a liquidity lever, right? So, I view it as more than just view it as a tool to shape the overall, not just my tournament results, but the overall distribution of my returns. I'm trying to have a line that goes from here to here smoothly. I don't want a line that goes like this. Skill is this. This is not skill. Like that, right? So I'm trying to smooth out payoff problem. And most people think, okay, if a horse has negative edge, it's not a good bet. No, if you think about a portfolio context, like the bond for finance, a negative edge horse can be better. It can be bet because it provides diversification and smooths out your returns, right? So I'm not looking at just the overall edge. I'm looking at how does the tournament or that horse smooth out my entire portfolio bets, because what I have in a tournament is just a small piece of what I have in total in aggregate, And I think that what you said about, finding that edge, I think that's a lot of people that leak, right? Finding an opinion is one skill. Like, I know this horse is good is one skill. Converting that opinion into a bet and make money is a different skill. How much do I bet on this horse? What pools? Should I express in horizontals, verticals, stuff like that? So, that bet sizing to me is the most underrated skill. When do I bet small? When do I pass? When do I shove it all in? If you get the sizing right, your handicapping can be pretty shitty and you still do good because you're sizing to your best opinions, right? But do you know how big your opinions are? Is this a 20% edge? Is 10% edge? Is this a hedge type style to smooth out payoff profiles? What is it? And that's a very difficult thing to answer, but a very important one if you want to be profitable. Sizing.
So I'm gonna have to apologize. We need to go back 10 seconds because I just switched to the internet because of this hotel, whatever, over to my phone. So go back through the last, like you were talking about the curve and keeping a smooth curve, and then it kind of was getting a little garbly. So I want to make sure everyone heard that again. Could you mind refreshing?
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows you got to separate the handicapping from the betting. A lot of people get the handicap right. I like this horse, but they get the betting wrong. They don't know, oh, I like this horse at 4-1, but not 3-1. This horse has implied edge of here, but if it goes here, it's not a good bet. I should be betting it in the doubles rather than exactas, whatever, right? They have a good handicapping idea. It's a pie in the sky estimate, but to get really good, you need a fair odds line, and you need to understand why the horse not taking money, why it is, who are the actors backing this horse, who are not backing the horse, is it sharp money, public money? I mean, it's just common stuff across all gambling games, right? So I think you can be right about a horse, but you can bet it badly. Everyone knows that. You can be right and lose money, right? You can also turn a small edge into a big mistake if you size emotionally, right? If you have a small edge and you decide, no, I think this is actually a really big edge, you might overbet and still go broke, right? So the bet size is the most important thing. And it's like an intersection between discipline and ego. If you have enough ego, strong enough to bet big, but enough discipline or betting big means you go broke, right? The number one thing I'm trying to avoid is going broke, because once you go broke, your edge means nothing. You can't make money if you don't have money to bet with, right? So, and you see a lot of people, oh, I'm the best horse player in the world, but I'm broke. That doesn't make any sense. If you're the best horse player in the world, the bankroll shouldn't matter. Your money should compound pretty quickly, right? So this whole thing about I don't have the bankroll, that's bullshit, right? Yeah, you can start with $100 and build into millions in horse races easily, right? So, anyways, the bet size where confidence is key. That's what I look at when I see someone sharp. Are they sizing to the strength and opinions? Are there larger bets actually making more money? So the weak is not always the bad picks. It's the good opinions expressed in the wrong size. That's my opinion.
Well, to me, I think it's like, if you're gonna make okay, so there's how do you structurally, fundamentally win a tournament, right? How can you come up with a strategy based on your skill set and then execute? There's just, you have to play by the rules, by your own rules to get there. But you bring up something that's very interesting, which is there's almost this facade, this mirage around, I could have won if I would have bet more, and that's this interesting, like, internal dialogue that I think people face. Is, you said it best, sizing is probably the biggest indicator of strength of play. And I'm not saying that because like you and I'll throw all in. That doesn't mean anything. You have to understand, first of all, you have to have the bankroll, and then you have to understand how you're going to get to where you need to get. And then you have to ask yourself, okay, how much confidence do I have based on this day and these horses? When am I going to send it? Should I go all in here? Should I go half here? Should I go, I fundamentally, it was funny because I was talking about the Keeneland tournament, and I ended up putting $1,000 on 8-1, got to like 10. And I was immediately kind of like feeling the ick, because I'm like looking at the rest of the day, and I was going to send it on this 2-1 shot. It won, and he won, and I was at 30K, and I'm like, fuck, I'm done. I'm not.
With the horse that you hit at 8-1, do you have both entries 11 or just one?
Yeah, I had 2 entries at the time, and I didn't. And the thing was, the scratches were. What's that?
Was the opinion strong enough to send both tickets on that horse and win the tournament?
No, it wasn't. But The hard part was the scratches that happened like 30 minutes before I made that decision, influenced, like, there's there's that, the more time we have to go through the visualizations and the models and the scenarios before a tournament, the more comfortable I feel and the more I perform. So
Mhm.
that was an indication of weakness because I wasn't mentally ready to structure my ticket. Now here's the irony. Even
Right.
if I would have bet 1,500 on that horse and got myself to 15K, let's say I
Yeah.
get to 45K, guess what? Nichols still would have beat me because
Yeah.
he had the horses, he had the prices, and he would have just bumped up his doubles to get past me. So
Mhm.
it's fine. And that happens. And in tournaments in general, I think you have to assume half the time you're going to lose in the last race. Like that's probably rule of thumb. But that doesn't mean, oh my God, every time the winner is going to hit the last race. I think that's total like BS. There are times, plenty of times when people get further along. But I just want to wrap up the earlier thing you said, though. When you talk about confidence and you talk about sizing, that is the number one, like, beautiful tell of a great player because the consistency of the sizing, and performance tied to the sizing, and you can break it down by odds,
Yeah.
different categories and stuff. I think that is where I value. I have tiers of players that I look at because if you can hit horses at certain prices and you're going big on that, like, I mean,
Mhm.
I think there's a thing about style, right? Like if you're gonna win a tournament a certain way, like it's kind of like, okay, do you want to win a football game on a Hail Mary?
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing. Do you want to win a football game by just destroying the team like the Eagles did to the Chiefs? Like that's a statement, right? And then there's, the 2-minute drill and you might be able to win. And there's beautiful things with the way the Patriots won, who are, one of the best teams in the history of the game. And I understand that they grinded it out, but they were so much better. Same with the Chiefs. They did that a lot too. So anyway, I'm going on and on, but like I think you brought up a very good point when we try to evaluate, elite play, like how do we do that? And I think you're talking about the players must understand, do they have the value on the horses? And then when
Mhm.
they do, how over the long run do they structure their tickets and size so that they can literally lead to, a higher performance rate, strike rate over time?
I think you nailed it, which is like there's tells of like what is a good play versus bad play, right? And it comes down to like kind of finesse, right? Was this hit intentional or was it by accident, right?
Right.
Was this trifecta box just all the launches came in and you blew through the total, or did you size the bet intentionally where it gets you to the position you want with the least amount of risk? That and you could tell. Did someone play this horse and just sit there waiting the last race? They had an opinion, or this person decided to shove it all in the first race on a 10-1. That's an opinion. That's not by accident. So
Mhm.
I think you have to look at those clues. Was this hit by accident, or this clues intentional and planned? And that's the very, very obvious to me, at least, when I look at bets. But
Yeah, I know it's fun to
tournament betting,
it's
tournament bet is not the same as cash betting, right? In cash play, you're optimizing long run expected value and bankroll growth. In tournament, you're optimizing for a chance to win or place under a very specific payout structure, right? So that means that the mathematically correct play could be completely different than what cash play would suggest, right? So they're tied, but they're different games. But I think the lessons that you learn in good tournament play, like put less money in your stupid opinions, really big money on your big opinions, trying to squeeze every little bit of the edge out, think in terms of probabilities. I think those are very useful lessons when you decide to go down the rabbit hole of trying to beat the pari-mutuel pool on millions and handle. That's I think it's good stepping ground tournaments. It teaches some good lessons, right? And at a cheap cost. It's not going to cost you that much because you learn your lessons cheaply, right? So
yeah, yeah. I think you do have to lose a lot in the beginning of this game to know your boundaries. And I think that's the thing that helped me in the tournament world is, I bet when I was younger and I lost and I made a little and I'd win but it's like one thing, it's delusional, right? I
yeah,
could tell you so many favorites that I thought were going to lose. Like even on there's a big day at Del Mar when Cigar lost and we thought maybe like Cigar was vulnerable, but we didn't have Darren Go. so it doesn't mean anything. And then you believe you're a good player, but if you're not delivering on the ROI and you're not hitting, like you're just kind of like in this weird like purgatory. You have to do both. You have to take out 30% of the takeout. Basically, you have to be heavy against favorites, and then you have to on the other side have some upside on a price, and that's a 5 to 10 year plan. Most people, even if you look at data and you look at these arrays of value points. I mean, obviously you're looking at so many data sets and you're really deep in the numbers, and I think it's interesting because you know I'm using stuff, but I'm not modeling like you, nowhere near, right? So I'm using most of this like my mind, and I have like my boundary conditions, and I'd use some tech, but like it's not a feel, right? It's not a feel at all. It's math that gets me
Yes.
to a point where, okay, now I'm in a gray zone. And when I'm in the gray zone, is it dark gray? Is it light gray? Is it metallic gray? And that's where the skill comes in. You have your like you screwed up on Skippy, and that's not a problem because your math told you there, and you've seen that if it goes one way or whatever, and switch it. But like that's where the game, when we're playing at this level, trying to win and send it and beat everybody, like we have to figure out that little stuff, that je ne sais pas.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned about Skippy is kind of like very important of tournament versus cash play, right? Which is Skippy is one of those type of horses that eventually is going to win a race at a big price. Did it in the Pegasus, it's just the wrong race, right?
Mm.
For a long run, back in the horse makes money, but in the tournaments, there's no long run. You don't get to shoot for the BCBC twice, right? In the Pegasus, so you only have a one shot. So that's what makes it more painful, which is I only have one at bat. Whereas a gambler, you want as many fucking at bats as possible. You have an edge, right? And they only one way at bat. So, and I think that's going to be always a painful one, but I expect to win one of these years, right? So hopefully the next time around I'll make the right decision, make the swap, make the right swap. I swap all the time. I go on a horse, loving a horse, and I end up fading the horse. I have no allegiance. I don't have allegiance to horse. I have allegiance to the price.
Yeah.
Most people are handicapping horses. Pros handicap the price. That's all that matters. I will back a cockroach to win the Grade 1 Kentucky Derby if I'm getting the right price, because there is a 1,000,000,000 to 1 shot that something crazy is going to happen, and the race is canceled. I don't know, and I don't know, but there's a price at which I'll bet anything at.
Well, this is so you're basically talking about nuclear war, and that the cockroaches are the only things that are surviving at the track, and they
whatever. A 1,000,000 to 1 is probably a good odds fund. I'll take the 1,000,000 to 1. You can't collect on that, obviously, but you get my point. It's a fair price for everything.
I get it.
So
no,
that's the key. When you told Shu, hey, build a fair odds line. It's a very difficult exercise to build a good odds line, but I think it's necessary to compete today. You need good probabilities. You can't be like, oh, I think this horse will win 33%. The 30%. You got to say, oh, the horse is probably going 33% time because these conditions, weather, whatever, So, yeah.
I mean, that's the game, right? It's like, and even we're talking about tournament sizing. If you cannot predict your 2 to 1 shots, your second favorites, your third favorites, or your prices, if you can't get them in a tight window, like if you can't hit your 10, if you can't hit a 10 to 1 shot 10% of the time, then you should not bet 10 to 1 shots, right? And that's the thing, is like that's the skill where I think the players need to understand more about how they can get accurate, and then once they're accurate, then they can size. So like that's, I think, the struggle for a lot of tournament people too, is they haven't got the I guess the true structure of their brain down. And I think that's one of our edges is that we have that, and so that's allows us to be more confident and so forth. And I do want to bring up one story, because I don't know how much more time we have, but I do want to ask I think maximum security, not to like put salt in the wound here with Skippy, but like it's more fun to talk about the losses. And I mean, you've won so many things.
I like talking about losses. I don't get anything out of talking about games.
Exactly. There's no point, right? So when you were, I think I was there with you at the Derby that day, right? Because you we both like maximum security, and I'm not typically a guy that bets the favorites in the Derby. I don't know if you saw my video I did, but like this year is just chaos to me. But when you when you look at that day, you made the right call, and it's so crazy, right? I remember you were like, because I didn't think the horse was going to get DQ'd. Like I really didn't. And then you think about the politics, and then I felt so bad for you because that was like a big moment for you where you were going to really take down a major, and and I just couldn't believe it. And you had, I think, what did you end up, you bet, did you set it all to win, or did you have the exact, I can't, you don't have, you set it to win, right?
I set it all to win. Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing with maximum security is, going in, I knew that was the bet, right? Everything lined up, right? So it was tough to swallow because it's out of control. It's kind of lost where you can't really process in real time, right? You're living inside the biggest swing I had at that time, right? Winning is 6 figures a gain, and losing means I lose my bankroll, which is altogether is probably a near $200,000 swing that race for me. At the time, that was my biggest swing ever on a race, right? And then it gets decided on a wheel in a way that feels completely out of your control, right? So that's what sucks. I had no control. So you prepare for bad trips, bad photos, but you can't really prepare for history, right? That was a historical DQ, right? So, it taught me that, look, variance is funny. The gambling gods can be funny sometimes, but that's also the game, right? It's don't let one traumatic thing rewrite your entire process. Don't change anything. I'm not going to change anything. I laugh about it today. It was a swing, and it showed progress. Like back then, it was a big deal. Now, I mean, it'll still hurt, but 6-figure swing, it's part of business. It's a big part of business, but it's a part of business, right? I anything that's important. I have about like 5-10 minutes left, Christian. I got to get going, but
Yeah. Me too.
that you want to ask, or you think people want to know? And
Yeah, I mean, people want to know just, how do you do what you do? I guess that would be one thing. Like when you think about, I know obviously you create all these variables, give people like a 20-second teaser on, you're aggregating data sets, you're putting into, machine learning and building systems and models and stuff. Just give people an idea of how hard it is to do what you do, so that they can understand that you're not a CAW per se. You're like a CAW light, or like a diet CAW, I guess I would say. Give people some like fodder, because I don't think people realize, like, everyone wants to hate on the bigger players or the better players and stuff sometimes. Like, you've dedicated God knows how many years to this and how many millions of dollars to this. So give people just an overview of how hard you work at this. And I know you got a family now. You got 3 kids, by the way, which is freaking awesome. Like, so happy for you and Mona. It's like, but like, give people an idea of like your life now as a professional gambler and how you built what you built.
Yeah, so I think it's a lot of work, man. I think all my life's learnings have led up to this point, right? Which is, I started coding when I was 8 years old. My mother studied computer science, so I would go to school with her, and I was programming since I was 8, right? So, and then I got involved with the games, and I learned about Magic Gathering and stuff like that, how to build strategies to take advantage of other people's weak play. Then I found poker, and I found finance, and I found horse racing. So they all have a similar theme, and they all taught me certain skill sets that I use in horse racing today. So obviously, I approach from a quantitative standpoint because I do that for efficiency, right? I want to be able to tackle, 10 cards a day and not just 1 or 2, right? So I'm going to give up finding the deep, meaningful edges that the traditional handicappers do because they do close work, but I'm going to make up for it in breadth. I'd rather make, like Walmart, I'd rather make $1 from 1 million customers than $100 from 2 customers, right? So I'm always talking about breadth. So what goes into it, a lot of data, man. Data you can buy, data you can't buy, data I add to myself, data I collect myself. Data's not clean. I got to clean it. It takes fucking time, right? And then I got to turn those data into things that predict the value of the horse, not just what the probability of the horse is, but probability of finishing second, third, is the value in daily doubles, stuff like that. There's a lot of data, dude. I'll tell you weather. I got to map every single track. Historically, our snapshots by the day. Dew point, temperature, liquidity, everything compared to history, wind speed, everything. I'm just basically building a better thoroughgraph Ragozin number that no one has, stuff like that. And then it feeds into how do I weight these things properly? What am I trying to predict here? Is it the probability of the horse? Is the closing line? What am I trying to predict? There's a lot that goes in. And then after the execution, that's the hardest part. How do I put in production? I don't have time clicking buttons. I need everything to be better automatically, right? So I have CRW like qualities, but I'm not CRW. I'm not registered. I don't get the same rebates they do. I don't have the same type of, betting limits they do in terms of number of transactions do a second, but that's not my game. I'm not trying to be a market maker, right? In finance, there's market makers. I'm not trying to be a market maker. I'm trying to be a very specialized niche hedge fund in the horse space that takes advantage of certain inefficiencies that I think I know where very few people know, right? So that's my life, which is plugging away at the leaks I have. As I bet during the day, I find things that don't work. I plug those. I find new days to test those. Hardening the way I bet in real time. Are there things I need to, should I space on my order? Should I bet early? Should I bet late? Just so much that goes in the game. I have a list of tons of things I need to work on. So the number one thing is, my job is to work hard, adapt, not complain, but execute, and try not to go broke in the process so I can actually realize my edge in the long run. That's my summary.
Yeah, but you probably do you work more on horses than you did on hedge funds, or was it vice versa if you got
Yeah,
into
I
this?
think so. I think at this point, before it was the hedge fund stuff's more sophisticated. I think at this point, the horse models are much more sophisticated. I'm actually very proud of them. So, we'll see where it leads me. But I know they're getting stronger. The market's getting stronger, but I think I'm getting stronger at an equal or faster pace. So we'll see. Only the time will tell, and the bankroll does not lie. So we'll figure it out later.
Yeah, well, I love that we met through this crazy show.
Meet some good people in horse racing. A lot of interesting people who have various backgrounds. It's just a great area of like you said, meeting some interesting people for sure.
And it takes a really courageous person to play the horses seriously and to dedicate your time and life and stuff. But I know you gotta.
I have to run. All right, so let's continue. Sorry about that. I have to run.
Well, tell best of the family. I'll see you again. And you know what? In the KDBC, like we're going at it, dude. There's no holds bar. So
good luck. Watch out for me in last race. See ya.
Yeah, me too. All right. See you, bud.